Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Earth Alliance flagship Intrepid, watching the swirling nebula clouds beyond the reinforced windows. The purple and blue gases seemed to mock the somber mood of the victory celebration being held in the ship's main hall below. After 6 years of brutal warfare with the Celestial Empire, humanity had emerged triumphant, though the cost had been staggering. Sarah's dress uniform felt stiff and uncomfortable, the weight of her medals seeming to pull her down like anchors. At 32, she had become humanity's most celebrated commander after leading the decisive battle at Proxima Centauri that forced the Empire to sue for peace. But victory brought little joy, only a bone-deep weariness, and the faces of those lost along the way. The door to the observation deck whispered open. Sarah didn't turn, expecting another admiral or diplomat seeking a moment of her time. Instead, a melodic voice spoke that sent an inexplicable shiver down her spine. The Crimson Nebula. We call it the tears of the Ancient Ones in our language. Sarah turned to find Princess Tilara of the Celestial Empire standing in the doorway. The alien royal cut in striking figure, tall and graceful, with iridescent silver skin that caught the starlight and swept back crystalline hair that chimed softly when she moved. Her formal robes flowed like liquid mercury around her willowy frame. But it was her eyes that caught Sarah's attention. Deep violet with flecks of gold, holding an ancient sadness that seemed to pierce straight through to Sarah's soul. Something about those eyes tugged at the edges of her memory, like a half-remembered dream. Commander Chen. Tilara inclined her head slightly. I hoped I might find you here, away from the festivities. Your Highness, Sarah replied with careful neutrality. I wouldn't have expected you to seek me out, considering I led the fleet that defeated your people. A ghost of a smile touched Tilara's lips. Perhaps that is precisely why we should speak. The future of both our peoples may depend on what happens in these early days of peace. Sarah studied the princess, trying to place the strange sense of familiarity. You seem different from the other imperial delegates. Less hostile. Tilara supplied. We are not all warmongers, Commander. Some of us remember a time when our peoples might have been friends rather than enemies. She moved to stand beside Sarah at the window, close enough that Sarah could hear the subtle crystalline chiming of her hair. This nebula, Tilara continued softly. I used to watch it as a child, from a very different vantage point, with a friend who taught me to see its beauty rather than fear its chaos. Sarah frowned, a memory stirring. Sitting on red grass under twin moons, pointing out shapes in the distant nebula to someone important. But the memory slipped away like smoke when she tried to grasp it. The humans have a saying, Tilara said, watching Sarah's expression carefully. The stars remember what we forget. Do you believe that, Commander? I'm not sure what I believe anymore, Sarah admitted, except that I'm tired of war. As am I. Tilara turned to face her fully. Which is why I have a proposal, one that could help ensure this peace lasts, if you are willing to hear it. Sarah met those haunting violet eyes, and for a moment she saw something there, a flash of shared pain, of loss, of hope. I'm listening. There are forces in both our governments who would prefer the war continue, Tilara said, who profit from conflict and fear. They will try to sabotage these peace talks. I need someone I can trust on the human side, someone who understands that peace is worth fighting for. And you think you can trust me? Sarah asked. We've only just met. Tilara's expression became unreadable. Perhaps we know each other better than you remember, Commander Chen. Or should I say, Stargazer. The childhood nickname hit Sarah like a physical blow, sending her staggering back a step. Fragments of memory burst behind her eyes. A young alien girl with violet eyes, laughing as they ran through red grass, sharing dreams of peace between their peoples, making promises under twin moons. It's not possible, Sarah whispered. Tilara, my Tilara. But before the princess could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Sarah's comm unit crackled to life with reports of unauthorized weapons fire in the main hall. The peace talks were under attack. Sarah met Talara's eyes, seeing her own alarm reflected there. Whatever answers lay in their shared past would have to wait. Right now, they had a peace to save, if they could trust each other enough to do it together. "Come with me," Sarah said, drawing her sidearm. "We need to get you somewhere safe." "No," Talara replied firmly. "We face this together, as we once did long ago. The peace between our peoples may depend on it." Sarah hesitated only a moment before nodding. Whatever their history, whatever lies between them, they had a chance to prevent more bloodshed. And sometimes she was beginning to realize the stars really did remember what people forgot. The corridors of the Intrepid echoed with chaos as Sarah and Talara raced toward the main hall. Warning klaxons blared overhead, their harsh sound mixing with distant weapons fire. But in Sarah's mind, other memories were surfacing, triggered by Talara's presence beside her, memories of a very different time, 20 years ago on the neutral colony world of Nova Eden. Sarah remembered the day they first met. She was 12, the daughter of Earth's ambassador to Nova Eden, exploring the red grasslands near the diplomatic compound. The alien girl she encountered seemed just as surprised to see her, a willowy creature with silver skin and crystalline hair, who introduced herself as Talara. Neither of them knew then that Talara was the heir to the Celestial Empire. On Nova Eden, she was just another child, sent there by her family to learn about other species. They became inseparable, two curious souls united by their fascination with the stars and dreams of a peaceful galaxy. "Left here," Sarah commanded, pulling herself back to the present as they approached the main hall. She could hear shouting and the distinctive whine of plasma weapons. "Remember the security protocols we discussed?" Talara nodded, her crystalline hair chiming softly with the movement. "The emergency barriers can seal off sections of the ship. We could trap the attackers between them." "Exactly what I was thinking." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Some things hadn't changed. They still worked well together, anticipating each other's thoughts. Another memory surfaced. Talara teaching her the ancient stories of her people, explaining how the Celestial Empire viewed the galaxy not as territory to be conquered, but as a garden to be tended. All species have their role, young Talara had told her, like different flowers in the same garden. The challenge is learning to grow together. They reached the security control panel, and Sarah's fingers flew over the controls. On the monitors, they could see the chaos unfolding in the main hall. A group of armed humans and Celestials, working together, Sarah noted with bitter irony, had taken several diplomats hostage. "They're wearing insignias I recognize," Talara said softly. "The purest faction. They believe any cooperation between our species is blasphemy." Sarah nodded grimly. "We have similar extremists, the Earth First movement. They've been claiming this peace treaty is a surrender." "How things change," Talara murmured. "Do you remember the promise we made? Under the twin moons?" Sarah's hand stilled on the controls as another memory washed over her. They were 15, sitting on their favorite hilltop, watching Nova Eden's twin moons rise over the Crimson Nebula. They'd just learned that Talara would be returning to the Empire the next day, her time on the colony world ending. "We'll find each other again," they'd promised, pressing their palms together, 5 human fingers intertwining with 6 alien ones. "And we'll show everyone that our peoples can be friends." 2 days later, the war began. The Celestial Empire, led by hardliners who feared human expansion, launched a surprise attack on 3 human colonies. Nova Eden, caught between the powers, was abandoned. Sarah and Talara's friendship became another casualty of the conflict, buried under years of propaganda and pain. "I tried to find you," Talara said now, her voice tight with old grief. "When I learned you were on Nova Eden, I searched the evacuation records. But your name wasn't there. My father got advance warning," Sarah replied, forcing herself to focus on the security controls. "We left the night before the attack. He He died 2 years later, in the Battle of Proxima Beta. Talara's hand touched her shoulder, 6 fingers squeezing gently. I fought against the attack on Nova Eden, tried to convince my father that war was a mistake, but the hardliners had too much influence. By the time I gained any real power in the Empire, it was too late, Sarah finished. And now here we are, trying to stop history from repeating itself. The monitors showed the hostage-takers growing more agitated, shoving their captives roughly. Among them, Sarah recognized Admiral Chen, her mother, who had succeeded where her father had failed, negotiating the peace that ended the war. "We need a plan," Sarah said, pushing aside the weight of the past. "Something they won't expect." Talara's violet eyes lit up with a familiar gleam. The same look she'd had when they were children plotting some adventure. "They expect us to be enemies," she said. "They'll never anticipate us working together." Sarah felt a slow smile spread across her face, like different flowers in the same garden. "Exactly." Talara's crystalline hair chimed as she leaned closer to the monitors. "I assume your security training included close-quarters combat." "Top of my class," Sarah confirmed. "And you?" "Every Imperial heir is trained in the ancient arts of our warrior poets." Talara's silver skin seemed to shimmer with anticipation. "Shall we show them what happens when humanity and the Celestial Empire truly cooperate?" Sarah checked her weapon and nodded. 20 years of war and pain lay between them, but in this moment, she felt like that young girl on Nova Eden again, certain that anything was possible if they faced it together. "Let's remind them," she said, "why this peace is worth fighting for." The main hall of the Intrepid had become a battlefield. Overturned tables created makeshift barricades, and the elegant decorations meant to celebrate peace now lay scattered across the floor. Sarah and Talara crouched in a service corridor, observing through a maintenance grate as the terrorists, 8 humans and 6 Celestials, kept their weapons trained on the hostages. "Your mother," Talara whispered, nodding toward Admiral Chen. "She's trying to negotiate with them." Sarah watched her mother's calm face as she spoke to the terrorist leaders. Even at gunpoint, Jessica Chen carried herself with the same quiet dignity that had helped her broker peace between their species. "She's buying time," Sarah murmured. "She knows we'll be coming." Through their hidden vantage point, they could hear fragments of the terrorists' demands. They wanted the peace treaty destroyed, the diplomatic delegation separated, and safe passage to a waiting ship. The human extremists spoke of racial purity and manifest destiny, while their celestial counterparts preached about genetic superiority and divine right. "It would be almost funny," Talara said softly, "if it weren't so tragic. They're more alike than they realize." Sarah checked her weapon again, running through tactical scenarios. "The emergency barriers are ready. Once we trigger them, we'll have 30 seconds before they seal. We need to get the hostages clear in that window." "Leave that to me." Talara's fingers brushed Sarah's arm. "My people have certain abilities that the Empire keeps secret. Watch." Talara closed her violet eyes, and her silver skin began to emit a subtle glow. The crystalline strands of her hair vibrated with an almost inaudible hum. Sarah felt a strange sensation, like static electricity raising the hair on her arms. In the main hall, several small decorative crystals, part of the Celestial Empire's ceremonial gifts, began to resonate with the same frequency as Talara's hair. The terrorists didn't notice, but Sarah saw Admiral Chen's eyes widen slightly as one of the crystals near her feet started to pulse with light. "A form of quantum entanglement," Talara explained, her voice strained with concentration. "We can communicate through crystalline structures. Your mother will understand what to do when the time comes." Sarah stared at her childhood friend with new understanding. How many other secrets lay hidden behind the public face of the Celestial Empire? How much didn't they know about each other, even now? "Why didn't your people use this ability during the war?" she asked. Talara's expression darkened. "The same reason we kept many things hidden. Fear," Fear that if humans knew our true nature, they would find ways to turn it against us. Fear breeds fear, and secrets breed secrets, until war becomes inevitable. But you're showing me now, Sarah said softly, because someone has to take the first step toward trust. Hilara's free hand found Sarah's, 6 fingers interlacing with 5. As we did when we were children. The moment was interrupted by shouts from the main hall. One of the human terrorists was growing agitated, waving his weapon toward the celestial delegates. How do we know you haven't planted tracking devices on us? Your kind are always hiding something. His celestial counterpart turned on him. Watch your tone, human. Remember who you're speaking to. Sarah felt Tilara tense beside her. Their alliance is fracturing. We need to move soon, before they turn on each other. Sarah squeezed her friend's hand once before letting go. Give me 3 minutes to get into position on the other side. When you see me signal, trigger the crystals. The hostages will have their distraction, and the barriers will trap anyone left inside. Be careful, Tilara said, her violet eyes intense. I didn't find you after 20 years just to lose you again. Sarah managed a small smile. I survived 6 years of war. I think I can handle a few extremists. As she crept through the service corridors, Sarah reflected on the strange turns of fate that had brought them to this moment. She and Tilara had once been children dreaming of bringing their peoples together. Now they were working to save a peace that seemed as fragile as the crystals, scattered across the floor. When Sarah reached her position, she could see her mother watching the pulsing crystal by her feet. Admiral Chen's face showed no reaction, but her body was tensed like a coiled spring, ready to move. The other hostages seemed to sense something was about to happen, an electric tension filling the air. Sarah raised her hand, giving the signal. Across the hall, through the maintenance grate, she saw Tilara's silver skin begin to glow. The next few moments would determine whether their childhood dreams of peace would finally have a chance to bloom, or if fear and hatred would once again tear everything apart. But this time, at least, they would face it together. The crystals exploded with brilliant light, filling the main hall with a dazzling display that momentarily blinded the terrorists. In that instant of chaos, Admiral Chen sprang into action, shouting commands to the other hostages in both human and celestial languages. Sarah burst from her hiding place as Tilara emerged from the opposite side, their movements perfectly synchronized. The emergency barriers began descending with a low hum. Sarah fired her weapon with surgical precision, disabling 2 human terrorists before they could recover. Across the hall, Tilara moved like liquid mercury, her crystalline hair creating patterns of light that confused and disoriented their opponents. Get to the exits, Sarah shouted to the hostages, providing covering fire as they rushed for safety. Her mother was helping a wounded celestial diplomat, half carrying him toward the barrier's threshold. But one of the terrorist leaders, a scarred human with hatred burning in his eyes, recovered faster than expected. He raised his weapon toward the fleeing hostages, and Sarah knew she wouldn't be able to reach them in time. Suddenly, Tilara's voice rang out in an ancient language Sarah hadn't heard since their childhood. The crystalline fragments on the floor rose into the air, forming a shimmering barrier between the terrorists and their targets. The energy blast from the leader's weapon scattered harmlessly across the crystal shield. Abomination. One of the celestial terrorists snarled at Tilara. You reveal our sacred arts to these primitives. The only primitives here, Tilara replied calmly, maintaining the crystal barrier, are those who choose hatred over understanding. Sarah used the distraction to work her way closer to the terrorist leader, but he spun toward her with unexpected speed. His weapon discharged, and Sarah felt searing pain along her arm. She stumbled, falling behind an overturned table as more shots followed. Sarah. Tilara's cry held 20 years of buried emotion. The crystal barrier pulsed with renewed energy, and Sarah felt that strange resonance again, stronger this time. Through her pain, she realized she could sense Tilara's presence, almost like a song at the edge of her consciousness. Impossible, Tilara whispered, her violet eyes wide with shock. You're resonating with the crystals, but only our people can. The terrorist leader laughed bitterly. Now you see the truth, Princess. Why this peace can never work. They've been experimenting with our biology, stealing our sacred gifts. No. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos. She stood just beyond the descending barrier, supporting the wounded celestial diplomat. We didn't steal anything. We evolved it independently. The hall fell silent except for the hum of the barriers. Sarah watched understanding dawn on Tulara's face as Admiral Chen continued. That's what we discovered in the classified genetic studies. Humans and celestials share common ancestors from long before either of our civilizations existed. We're not separate species. We're distant cousins who took different evolutionary paths. Lies. The celestial terrorist leader snarled, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Sarah rose from behind the table, keeping her weapon trained on the terrorist leader despite her injured arm. It's why Tilara and I connected so easily as children. Why some humans can sense your crystal resonance. We're not meant to be enemies. We never were. Tilara moved to stand beside her, silver skin glowing with emotion. That's what my father discovered near the end of the war. Why he finally agreed to peace talks. Our peoples aren't just diplomatically compatible. We're biologically related. The terrorist leader's weapon wavered. Then all we fought for was based on a lie. Sarah finished. One that cost millions of lives on both sides. The emergency barriers were nearly closed. In moments, the terrorists would be trapped. The terrorist leader looked from Sarah to Tilara, seeing their unity, their shared resonance with the crystals. His hands began to shake. You can still choose a different path, Tilara said softly. Help us build the peace we should have had 20 years ago. For a moment, the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. Sarah felt Tilara's presence in her mind growing stronger, their old connection deepening through the crystal resonance. Together, they stood ready for whatever came next. Two children of the stars who had found each other again, determined not to let fear tear them apart this time. The terrorist leader lowered his weapon slowly, decades of hatred warring with the undeniable truth before him. Around him, the other extremists followed suit, their resolve crumbling in the face of Sarah and Tilara's unified stand. The emergency barriers sealed with a final hiss, securing the area as security teams rushed in to take control. Hours later, Sarah stood once again at the observation deck, her injured arm now properly treated. The Crimson Nebula continued its eternal dance outside the window, but everything else had changed. Tilara stood beside her, both of them watching their reflected images in the reinforced glass, human and celestial, different yet undeniably connected. The genetic research was why they attacked today, Tilara said softly. Someone leaked the preliminary findings. The extremists on both sides couldn't bear the truth. Sarah nodded, feeling the subtle resonance between them through the nearby crystals. Now that she understood what it was, the connection felt natural, right? Finding out we're related species changes everything. No wonder they were desperate to stop the peace talks. But they failed, Admiral Chen said, entering the observation deck. She looked tired but satisfied. The treaty has been signed, with additional provisions for sharing genetic research and crystal technology. Tilara turned to face the Admiral, her crystalline hair chiming softly. Your secret is safe with us. The knowledge that some humans can access crystal resonance will be revealed gradually, Admiral Chen finished, along with the truth about our shared ancestry. People need time to adjust to such revelations. Sarah felt a smile tugging at her lips, like the time two children needed to learn about each other on Nova Eden. Exactly. Hilara's hand found hers, 6 fingers intertwining with 5. We learned to see past our differences because we had no preconceptions. Perhaps our peoples can learn the same way. Admiral Chen watched their joined hands with knowing eyes. The Intrepid will be hosting a joint scientific mission to study the genetic links between our species. We'll need leadership that understands both cultures. Sarah caught her mother's meaning. You want us to head the mission. Who better? Tilara's violet eyes sparkled with the same excitement Sarah remembered from their childhood adventures. We bridge both worlds. We always have. Looking out at the nebula, Sarah thought about the path that had brought them here. A childhood friendship torn apart by war, yet strong enough to survive and help forge a lasting peace. The crystal resonance hummed between them, a physical manifestation of a connection that had never truly broken. The Ancient Ones knew, Tilara said thoughtfully. That's why they called the nebula their tears, not of sorrow, but of joy. They knew their children would find each other again among the stars. And now we have the chance to do what they couldn't finish, Sarah replied. To unite our peoples not just through treaties, but through understanding our shared heritage. Admiral Chen moved to leave them alone. The scientific mission launches in 1 week. I trust you'll both be ready. After she left, Sarah and Tilara remained by the window, their joined hands a bridge between two peoples who had nearly destroyed each other before discovering their common roots. The crimson nebula painted their reflections in shades of purple and blue, making it harder to tell where human ended and celestial began. Do you remember what else we used to do on Nova Eden? Tilara asked softly, besides watching the stars. Sarah smiled, memory washing over her. We made up stories about the future, about adventures we'd have together when we grew up. And now here we are. Tilara's free hand gestured to the vast expanse of space before them, ready to write a new story. Sarah squeezed her friend's hand, feeling the crystal resonance sing between them. Their childhood dreams hadn't been foolish after all, just ahead of their time. Now they had the chance to make those dreams reality, not just for themselves but for both their peoples. Together, Sarah said, and felt Tilara's response both in the gentle pressure of her six-fingered hand and in the harmonious hum of the crystals. Together. Beyond the window, the crimson nebula continued its ancient dance, its swirling colors a reminder that the universe's greatest secrets often lay in the connections between seemingly different things. And sometimes, it took the wisdom of children to show adults the way back to the truth they had forgotten. That the stars hold enough light,